So I was just talking to Alana on our team, and she was telling me about someone named Wendy. I have this problem. It is really a problem. When I hear a word, it is typical that I associate it with a 60s song. And now I have the song Wendy by the association going through my mind. Typically, the way that I get these songs out of my mind is to sing it, but I'm going to spare you, and I'm just going to let it stay stored up in my mind. And maybe as soon as I get these podcasts recorded, I'm just going to go sing at the top of my voice that Wendy has stormy eyes that flash at the sound of lies. So I'm sparing you the singing, and my son would be very proud of you, proud of me for sparing you the singing. We're going to talk about why very few churches do evangelism. It is a reality. Very few churches do evangelism. It's an amazing reality because the last words of Christ on earth were, "You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." They must have been important because that's what he left us before he ascended to go into the right hand of the Father. It must be important because that's what he told us to do as we were left here on earth in the power of the Holy Spirit. Well, let's talk about why very few churches do evangelism. But first, thank you, Belay. If you've been listening to previous podcasts, you know that they're the sole exclusive sponsor of the brand new. And now that we're on episode 22, at some point, I'm not going to be able to say brand new, but we're still pretty new. And by the way, let me mention, this podcast is growing. We are so grateful for you listeners and viewers. We are moving way on up in terms of downloads and people who are joining us. So thank you for that. Belay, if you've heard me say anything about them, they come alongside the church and provide virtual workers. It could be a virtual assistant, a virtual bookkeeper. It could be someone in a special role to help you do some things that you need to get off your plate in ministry. Their download, which is called 25 Tasks a Pastor Can Delegate to an Assistant, is incredible. You need to get it. It'll take you 3 minutes to go through it. And you might be able to find some things on there where you can find you can eliminate 2, 3, 4 hours a week in things you're already doing just by delegating to an assistant. So read that, download it. You can see it in the show notes, or you can go to belaysolutions.com/Thom Rainer. That's THOM Rainer, belaysolutions.com/Thom Rainer. All right, before we get to the question of the podcast, why very few churches do evangelism, or maybe to make it a question, why do very few churches do evangelism? Let's ask this question. Is that a reality? Do very few churches do evangelism? It's a stark reality. It is a sad reality. The evangelistic growth of churches, or conversion growth, if we've called it in the past, has been declining significantly. It used to take about 50 attendees a year. I'm talking about 10 years ago, to reach one person for Christ. And now it's taking far more than that. It's taking sometimes 100, 150 to reach one for Christ. In some churches, no people are being reached with the gospel. Evangelism is waning in churches, and yet it is the Great Commission. It is the command that we have given. They are the last words of Jesus, as I stated earlier in Acts 1:8, in his ministry here on earth. He told us to be his witnesses, and then he ascended. The Holy Spirit came upon the church. Peter preached a sermon, and many people were won to Christ. And then you get a description of the early church beginning in Acts 2:42. And then by the time you get to Acts 2:47, you see that many people became followers of Christ. All of what they were doing led to evangelism. Why then? Why are so very few churches doing evangelism? There are many possible reasons, but I'm going to give you one that we have found that is very common in churches. It is maybe the overwhelming number one reason, and it's the one that the enemy loves to use. And it is simply this: evangelism is an easy ministry to procrastinate. Let me say that again. Evangelism is an easy ministry to procrastinate. Let me elaborate. You pastors out there, what if you came in on a Sunday and you told your congregation, I never got around to preparing a sermon, so y'all just chat a while and then go home? Well, it wouldn't be long before you'd be sent home in a dismissal type of way. Why do you prepare your sermons? Well, that's your call to ministry, obviously. But why do some pastors prepare a sermon every week and then they don't lead the church in evangelism? Very simple reason. They are accountable to the congregation to preach that sermon. If there's an emergency that takes place and they need pastor to come, and maybe it's a life and death situation, and though you're not the medical personnel, they need someone representing the person of Christ to minister to that person that time of need, you're not going to be able to say, well, I just can't work it into my schedule. You take care of preaching. You take care of ministry. My guess is you have high expectation in most of your churches to make sure that your groups are working effectively. There's so many things because there is a way that accountability is taking place in all of those. But it is easy to procrastinate in evangelism. You know what? In most churches, if you procrastinate in evangelism, you're not going to have people come up to you and say, "Hey, we need to get really moving on evangelism. Let's get some things on the calendar." The reality of it is there is very a little accountability in evangelism, and the evil one, the enemy, loves the fact that we don't do evangelism because it's just not something that we work into our schedule. The tyranny of the urgent takes the precedent over the command of the Great Commission. And the tyranny of the urgent may be, rightfully getting that sermon done or taking care of that ministry, or it may be something mundane just because we think we have time. Listen to me on this, pastors and other leaders, and for those of you who are laity who are listening as well. You cannot be an effective New Testament church unless evangelism is a New Testament priority. One more time. You cannot be an effective New Testament church unless evangelism is a New Testament priority in your church. I'm going to be talking about in future episodes about how you can. In fact, in the next two episodes that follow this one, episode number 22 and episode number 23, you're going to be able to see that, well, this says all of these say 22, 23. Episode number 22 and 23, you're going to be able to see how you can help your church become more effective. We're going to talk about churches whose attendance is growing at 10% plus a year. We'll talk about that. We're going to be talking about the Hope Initiative, which is just around the corner. And these are some of the ways, not an exhaustive list, but hear me well. My prayer is for you to come away from this podcast, maybe not with a how-to, but I want to. God, I want to be effective leading my church to reach people with the gospel. Would you be willing just to start there with that simple prayer? And if you are, I'm going to do my very best to help in God's power to provide some suggestions and some tools that are certainly imperfect because they're from me, but some ideas that can help you be the evangelistic church that God has called you to be. The one reason why very few churches are doing evangelism is easy to procrastinate. The accountability is very, very low in most churches. Okay, stand by. On the next two episodes, we'll be talking about this topic, but we'll be expanding upon it on churches that are reaching people and something we are incredibly excited about called the Hope Initiative. Stand by for that. Don't forget, Belay has that download, 25 tasks a pastor can delegate to an assistant. It's yours for free. I've said in previous episodes, if you just do a few of these, you may find ways to save 2, 3, or 4 hours. You know what you can do with those 2, 3, or 4 hours? You can lead your church to be a more evangelistic church. Stay tuned. We'll be providing tools in the next episodes, and I hope to see you there. Hey, folks, this is a PS to our podcast. We got some exciting stuff that we want to offer you absolutely for free. Sam, when you think about predictive factors in a church's growth, if you take out demographics, what are some things that come to mind? Just two. I mean, don't give me a list of 10. Just 2 or 3 things that come to mind on predictive growth of a church.
Well, evangelism and whether the church is doing it or not.
Bingo.
And then I will add, is it an ongoing evangelism emphasis?
Double bingo.
Well.
double, and maybe something about leadership and their commitment to that. So all of the above.
Evangelistic churches have evangelistic pastors. Is the staff, is the lead pastor doing the work themselves?
We have a free download for you, and it's actually a sheet that you can self-score. You answer 20 questions, anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and we come back and we predict what your growth rate is going to be for the next year in worship attendance. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a good tool. There's a link to that for the attendance predictor. Look in the show notes. You'll absolutely love it. That's cool. We'll see you soon.